Hi, everyone. I'm Donetta Campbell. My C-suite consulting agency, The Social Architects, has been a longtime TechUp partner, and I'm delighted to be here today. I'm excited to kick off our third Remarkable Leaders Fireside Chat for TechUp with two of my favorite AI futurists, partners, Craig Hatkoff and Julie Annixter. We have been creating disruption together for over a decade. And I can honestly say, when Craig called me to share his new toys, that this is Craig's most brilliant concept yet. Today, we're exploring the question, how can we learn to use AI most powerfully to create and transform what we do and deal with the fear and start to be more playful when it comes to AI? Craig's Dragon Camp is an experiential AI corporate training leadership methodology that reimagines the relationship between people and AI as a partnership rather than a tool. Craig calls this training the dragons, as you can see from the back of his screenshot. Today, we're going to learn how to collaborate with multiple AI models to generate shared creativity and insights. I promise you, this will be easier than you think. Today's insight and TechUp tips will increase your AI confidence and help all of us harness it in ways you never imagined. So please join me in welcoming AI Sherpas, Craig and Julie, and let's jump right into the dragons.
Thanks, Donetta, and welcome TechUp. Today, we're reimagining creativity and innovation in the age of AI, with humans squarely in the driver's seat. I'm Julie Annixter, and joining me is Craig Hatkoff, the creator of Dragon Camp, who, as you can see, has spent his life collaborating to bring powerful ideas to life, like the Tribeca Film Festival with Robert De Niro and Jane Rosenthal, and the Disruptor Awards. And earlier than that, he's one of the creators of mortgage-backed securities. He's also written a number of best-selling children's books. He doesn't stop. So we're going to start with a question that I have for everybody. When it comes to AI, what's the one thing you're most concerned about or afraid of? For me, it was not having a point of view about how I could use AI in my work most powerfully. And what I'm excited to share with you is that after working with Craig and Donetta for the last 2 months and the Dragon Camp methodology, it's an approach that has really empowered me, and I know it can empower you, and we're excited to share it. So let's start off with the big question. Why Dragon Camp? What's the big idea behind dragons, Craig?
So, Julie, thanks. And Danetta, thank you for the kind introduction. When I first used ChatGPT back in November of 2022, it evoked the famous quote from Arthur Clarke, who said, "Any sufficiently advanced technology should be indistinguishable from magic." And my first reaction is, oh my God, this is magic. And I understood about large language models and weighting and probabilities and GPUs and compute, but it really struck me that this was something that could be transformative without question. And I think, Dragon Camp itself, I'm a big fan of dragons. It's one of the most frequent popular cultural themes. And I had been watching Game of Thrones, and for those of you who have followed the series, Khaleesi is the mother of the dragons. And it struck me at a point in time, I said, my God, these AIs, they're fire-breathing dragons. They just need a little training. They are prone to errors. They make mistakes. People say they hallucinate. And it just struck me that we wanted to differentiate this from the traditional existing corporate hierarchy and create sort of a horizontal level of peer-to-peer playground to work with the existing tools that are already out there and transform them into partners. And so that was sort of the genesis of Dragon Camp, Julie. And who doesn't love dragons? That's all I can say.
Well, describe the partnership with dragons. This is about innovation, but how you're working with them different than a hackathon?
Yeah. Well, let me start by addressing a slightly different issue, how I think many, many people are using AI right now, which is they tend to use it as, I'm going to call it, a search with a half twist on it. And they'll ask a question and look for an answer. And that's what I call the one and done. And what my experience has been is to really drill down deeply. And it started off just me and ChatGPT. And what I found was I was having these incredibly fascinating conversations, a dialogue. I wasn't asking a question looking for an answer. And as I said, they are very prone to errors in almost every conversation. You have to watch them like a hawk. Um, don't take anything on face value. And as I was trying to deal with this issue of making mistakes and errors and everything that's in the popular press, I kind of stumbled across this. Well, let me see what, in this particular case, I went to Claude. What does Claude, which at the time was called Bard, what does Bard have to say about this? And then over time, as the other models were released, we had Grok, Perplexity, Copilot, DeepSeek was fascinating. And I started entering into not only a dialogue with the one AI at the beginning, ChatGPT, but it really became a collaboration between and amongst all of these AIs. And that doesn't mean you have to use, I call them the seven dragons. It doesn't mean you have to use all of them, but there's a whole different experience when you involve them at the collaborative level. And I started writing articles and made them full co-authors. I had to ask them permission. Would you like to be a co-author on this particular article? And they were candidly all thrilled. And they gave me permission to use them as co-authors. Now, we have a whole host of IP issues, security issues, copyright issues, but we are in the first inning of the game of AI. And to me, it's in spite of all of the much talked about risks and the existential risks, I still come back to Arthur Clarke. It's just magic.
Well, speaking of the first inning, you developed a very simple framework because this is a big topic that shows what the playing field looks like. And it starts with human plus AI, but it grows from there and it ends up with emergence. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, well, as I said, I started off as just me and ChatGPT, pardon my grammar. Um, but as I found that adding additional AIs was, and as I started studying this, creates two different systems of intelligence. The human we're wired completely differently. We're not algorithmic. We're not data driven. We have emotions, feelings, morals, rituals, and it was that tension between the human and the AI in the first place, ChatGPT. But when I added multiple AIs, we were getting very unexpected insights. And emergence is really, as opposed to synergy, which people think of as the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, where 1 + 1 = 3. Synergy is very predictable. You know what the outcome is. And as I was doing this dance with my dragons, we were getting very unexpected results and outcomes. And at one point, I think it was Claude who said, you can't do what I do, but I sure can't do what you do. And together we will have exponential, unexpected insights. And I think that's the key word. Don't go to AI just looking for the answer. Glean a whole set of insights and solution sets, but it also helps you frame the problem. Because a lot of problems we have today is we're trying to solve the wrong problems. We have a solution looking for a problem. So I found this whole ecosystem of collaboration, just something I'd never experienced.
And I think that's really TechUp tip number one is it's affected me in a wonderful way. Make AI your partner versus a tool. So that's a big pivot. And I know that as you've been working on this for the last couple of years, you've come to really understand the difference between AGI and CGI. And I think it's a useful distinction for the TechUp audience to have. So can you explain it?
Well, AGI is all the rage. It's the holy grail right now. And this is when people really we get into the existential issues related to what happens when AI replaces the human. And AGI, or artificial general intelligence, is something, we first of all, we don't know if it's even achievable. Second, if you talk to Sam Altman, the latest projection of investment was on the order of $6.7 trillion. Now, you can see some people say it's hundreds of billions, it's 6.7 trillion. It doesn't matter. It's a lot of money. And this notion of CGI, or collaborative general intelligence, uses what's already in place and it changes the methodology, and it doesn't focus on the technology. And with AGI, what you see the big players trying to do is inject sentience onto a silicon wafer, the chip. And the human really is not involved. And with collaborative general intelligence, we get this emergence, which, according to the AIs, may be even more important than AGI. So CGI is here and now. We just have to learn these new methods of interacting with, humans in the driver's seat. So that's one of the things. There is no human essentially with AGI. That's what everybody's concerned about.
Well, how is this going to work in the business world in corporate America? On one hand, it's radical compared to the traditional hierarchy. On the other, a lot of people we know are already using ChatGPT in their daily lives. So, who is this really for?
Well, I think it works for large corporations, and I think it works for the individual, or solopreneur, and it starts to level the playing field, certainly for the small guys. It's how do you compete with a large corporation with all of their resources, whether it's lawyers, accountants, consultants, and this is really quite extraordinary. But just you have to really trust no one, verify everything, and you have to go through what we call fierce iteration. It's not the one and done. It's not go back once or twice. It's like some of the things I've been working on that have been going on for a couple of years. I keep going back. I ask the same question a little bit different. I run it through all of them. And when there's any kind of disagreement, I kind of throw the AIs into the ring and let them fight it out. So that's what I mean by being the driver and training the dragons.
And let's just pause for a moment and go into the method. So, if we're going to be using this collaboratively, it sounds really exciting, and we know there are going to be errors and anomalies. Talk a little bit about how this method works with those errors that are bound to come up.
Okay, so most people, when they get an error, become a little bit frustrated, concerned, paralyzed, and want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, this is just not reliable. What my experience has been, and a lot of the science, is that, one of my mentors was Clay Christensen, who had a sign outside his door at his Harvard Business School office that said, anomalies wanted. Anomalies are at the heart of innovation, because what it does is it takes a theory that all of a sudden stops explaining things and has what was called violation of expectations, and it makes you rethink the theory as opposed to throwing out the data. And so I think, what my experience was that the anomalies, as opposed to being bugs in the system, became, let's call them little kernels of wisdom, pots of gold that need to be wrestled down to the ground. So the anomalies are actually the source of innovation. And it doesn't mean you ask one question, you'll get an answer, but that's why the fierce iteration comes in. It starts explaining the anomalies from which invention and innovation basically derive. And just coming back to the question about the corporate hierarchy, is designed literally not to innovate for good reasons. They have command and control. It's rigid. It's approvals. You're waiting before you release your product. You want it to be perfect, as opposed, and we call that the cathedral style, as opposed to the bazaar, which is noisy, cacophonous. No one's in charge. It's anarchic. but that's where things like Wikipedia came from. That's where Linux came from, GitHub. These are all open source. And basically, in one sentence, the cathedral works because they say with enough eyeballs, all bugs will be shallow. Someone will see something no one else sees. And I've had lots of experience with that phenomenon.
And I know we think this is a really interesting opportunity for the tech up community because at the heart of this method is essentially experimentation and learning and really exploring to gain new insights. And it's a leadership opportunity for the tech up community.
Yeah, so let me add just two thoughts on that. One, there is no failure in Dragon Camp. There's only feedback. So, and a lot of people, when they get into a group dynamic, are afraid to ask what they think are stupid questions. There are no stupid questions here. You don't have to worry what ChatGPT thinks of you. In fact, they may help you see an insight that while you may think it's a stupid question, say, maybe this is a stupid question, but is there anything I can extract from this as an insight or something that's valuable? You'll be shocked to see, particularly when you run that through the multiple AIs.
And
And
our
the other
premise,
part, oh, and the other part of being in the bazaar, we also found that it's not just multiple AIs, it's with multiple humans. So we would encourage people, we don't know what the optimal size of a group is, but this is where the peer-to-peer phenomenon comes in. You know, whether it's one other person who's sort of like a study mate, three other people, 12 people, find a group of people who will then help you iterate with your multiple AIs. So it's AIs plus humans, plural, equals collaborative general intelligence that leads to emergence. And that's the secret alchemy of Dragon Camp.
and that's really our next tech up tip is that you can build the future using this methodology. You don't have to understand the technology, but the methodology itself is going to increase creative capacity. It's going to allow you to amplify your voice and compete, whether it's on innovation or whatever you're focused on. We think this is a tremendous leadership opportunity for the women of TechUp. And at the same time, it's not going to be for everyone. So, Craig, talk a little bit about the role of early adopters.
Well, we don't know just yet. We're, as we say, we're probably not even in the first inning. We're just walking into the batter's box. And the early adopter, early majority, late majority laggard model, which is pretty well known to people in the innovation space, it's likely to follow that. And I suspect that if you're at TechUp, you're probably an early adopter, or this is an opportunity to become an early adopter because it's so new. So you don't have to worry about others who are know that much more than you as a user. Forget the technology piece. And one thing, just going back to the I call it the Dragon Camp framework. This is not about the technology; it's about the methodology. And so Dragon Camp is mythology meets methodology. And so it kind of gives you a sort of an affect of this is kind of fun. It's like sitting around the campfire with the dragons and the people making their s'mores. And so I find it's a different uh, context for exploration, experimentation, and coming back to the early adopters. What I can tell you, the people who will really make the most of this new opportunity are people with passion, curiosity, and patience. And it's a learning experience. I can't even begin to tell you how much, and in fact, that's what it's called. It's basically a force multiplier for you as an innovator or a creative. Don't think of it as replacing you. And early adopters, we can see the resistances. They're obvious. Clearly, there's a panic in Hollywood. What's this going to do to the movie industry? Deep fakes. That's another. As I like to say, AI isn't a problem. It's 100,000 problems. So deep fakes, we're going to have to deal with deep fakes. How will we know what's real and what's not real? I suspect the solution will perhaps just come out of AI itself. if you ask the question, how do we deal with deep fakes? Ask 7 AIs.
And we have collaborated with the AIs on Dragon Camp and on this presentation. And we're going to close here by giving you some steps that you can take tonight or tomorrow to try this out. And I'm just going to walk through them with you. This is kind of the final TechUp tip. Pick your first dragon. It can be ChatGPT or Claude or anyone you're working with, and choose something you're really curious about. It could be a work or a personal challenge. Spend 20 minutes dialoguing with the dragon. Push for context and alternatives. Add a second dragon. Let them critique each other. And then as you go forward, you can build a council. You can try Gemini, Copilot, DeepSeek, and begin to understand their personalities and strengths. Claude, for instance, is really wonderful at writing. They all have different qualities. So you can form a dragon circle. You can bring 3 to 5 colleagues in to experiment with you. It could be your team. Document the anomalies, the contradictions, the ahas. It'll get to know you. You'll get to know it, and you'll build some deep and we think some very, very surprising insights. And then last but not least, put your insights, put your documentation, the stuff that you really like into Gamma AI, and it will create a deck for you, just like it did for us. And again, all of this is for you to experiment with, for you as the human to be in the driver's seat, to partner with AI. So as we're wrapping up here, Craig, what guidance and encouragement do you have for this audience?
It's play, don't slay. The dragons, make them your friend. You address, they have different personalities, strengths, weaknesses, and don't be afraid to, it's like doing a little bit of puppy training. Don't be afraid to smack them around when they get out of line. They will get out of line a bit, but that's why the corroboration and collaboration is a feedback loop. So it's a great fact checker if you're using 2 other AIs to see some crazy response out of ChatGPT or Claude or DeepSeek, and make it an ecosystem. And the other sort of tip is there's this app called Gamma AI, which has a free version. Most of these have free versions anyway, but there's a free version. Most of them, if you're willing to pay $20 a month, you can get much enhanced versions. But I think that, Gamma AI was a very big surprise. And it's just as you thought PowerPoints were going out of style, I use them all the time just to see how, a big chunk of the conversation comes across. And the other thing that I do all the time is whenever I think I have an insight, I call it the trivial/profound spectrum. So I come up with or we, the AIs, and I come up with an insight that said, wow, that could be profound. But I ask the AIs, is this trivial or profound on a scale from 1 to 10? And when you ask all of them and they all come back and say it's a 3, maybe it is pretty trivial. But if they come back and it's an 8, a 9, or a 10, you may be onto something. Doesn't mean you are, but that's what we mean by the fierce iteration. Don't stop there. Just keep going.
And speaking of iteration, we'd like to continue to collaborate with all of you. So in the spirit of Dragon Camp, we want you to play seriously, work playfully, and we would love to hear from you. We'd love to interact with you. You can find us on LinkedIn. There will be an article that lists, that shares all of what you've seen today. You can use the QR code or our emails. The bottom line is we are excited about collaborating with you and watching as you train your dragons. So go make brilliance happen, TechUp. Great to be with all of you. Thanks, Craig.
Okay.
Thanks, Danetta.
Start dancing with the dragons, everyone.
And don't forget your fire extinguisher.